Well, folks, I'll go ahead and get us started for our February 3rd, 2025 City Council meeting. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. and just welcome everybody that braved the weather to come down and join us. Thank you so much. Before we get started with our, and folks are online here, before we get started with roll call and the agenda, if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you very much. And Ms. Trimble will take a roll call when you're ready, please.
All right. Beginning with Anderson.
Present.
Becerra. Absent.
Yes.
Campbell.
Here.
Carlino.
Present.
Farmer. I believe she's absent. Jones.
Present.
Jordan.
Present.
Milson.
Present.
Nugent.
Present.
Savage.
Present.
Cheryl.
Present.
Vasika.
Present.
All right. We do have a quorum.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much. So let's see. We do have one set of minutes that have been submitted for your review, and those are from January 27th, 2025. Any questions or corrections to those minutes? And for the record, Ms. Trimble, Councillor Becerra is in the chambers, in the house. Thank you. All right. I'm not seeing any hands raised or any questions, so those minutes will remain as submitted. Thank you. The next is just a check-in on our committee schedule. How are we looking for this Wednesday, February 5th?
There are no changes to the committee schedule.
Okay, great. Thank you. Committee schedule looks to go from about 9 until 12:30 this Wednesday. And again, committee schedule is out front and online for anybody wishing to see what will be discussed during committees this week. Okay. Our next agenda item here is special presentations and proclamations. We don't have any neighborhood council updates, but we do have a proclamation to read aloud this evening. And this is in conjunction with the Missoula County. Whereas in 1926, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History started a National Negro History Week in the second week of February, intentionally chosen because it fell between the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. And whereas following the civil rights movement and a growing awareness of Black identity, in 1976, President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month, urging the public to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. And whereas while African American people never have totaled more than 1% of the state's population, they have been in the place that would become Montana since the earliest days of non-Indigenous presence and contribute greatly to Montana's culture, economy, and religious life. And whereas Missoula County and the city of Missoula recognize Montana's Black history, spanning from the first documented arrival of enslaved Africans in 1805 as part of the Lewis and Clark expedition into the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people, and the publication of Montana's first Black newspaper, The Colored Citizen, in 1894. To the election of Geraldine Travis, the first African-American woman elected to the Montana legislature in 1974, and the election of the state's first Black mayor, Wilmot Collins, in 2017. And whereas Montana's Black history is reflected in Missoula through the bravery and valor displayed by the 25th Infantry Bicycle Corps, the United States' first unit of Black soldiers formed in 1896 to test the combat viability of bicycles, including an over 1,900-mile ride from Fort Missoula to St. Louis, Missouri. And whereas Missoula County and the City of Missoula are proud to join the state of Montana in recognizing the accomplishments and contributions of Black Americans who are part of the fabric of our nation, both in Montana, throughout American history, and today. Now, therefore, we, the Missoula Board of County Commissioners and the Mayor of the City of Missoula, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2025 as Black History Month. All right. Thank you very much. And I don't believe there is anybody here to speak to this proclamation this evening, but I just want to double check with the audience, just in case. Okay, all right, not seeing anybody wishing to share. Thank you. So we do not have any public hearings this evening. In fact, we've got a pretty light agenda. So I want to again thank folks that came down with their camera equipment and notepads and came down in person. It's great to see everybody. We don't have any public hearings. We do not have any new business either. So we'll jump right into the consent agenda. And Ms. Trimble, if you will go ahead and share the consent agenda on screen before you read through that. And then we'll take public comment. We'll see if anybody wants to separate any items, and then we'll take some votes. How's that sound?
Right. On this evening's consent agenda, we have a recommended motion to approve accounts payable for checks or claims dated February 4th, 2025 in the amount of $1,055,725.03. We have a recommended motion to set a public hearing for February 10th, 2025 to consider the resolution for the first quarter fiscal year 2025 amendments to the annual appropriations. We have a recommended motion modifying the not to exceed contract amount to $2.4 million and a completion date on or before June 1st, 2025, and approve and authorize the mayor to sign the contract in change order with terra firma for grinding after the emergency storm cleanup. We have a recommended motion reappointing Danny Tenenbaum as an alternate member to the Missoula Consolidated Planning Board with a new term beginning January 1st, 2025 and running through December 31st, 2026. We have a motion, which is a recommended approval of the 44 Ranch subdivision, phases 16 and 17, phasing plan amendment, extending the final plat submittal deadline for phase 16 and 17 to December 31st, 2025, or December 31st, 2030 for phases 16 through 19, if prior to December 31st, 2025, the city subdivision regulations are amended with the city's code reform project to eliminate the current 20-year deadline based on the finding of fact and conclusions of law and subject to the amended conditions of approval in the staff report as amended by the memo number 1, memo number 2, and city council. We have a recommended motion appointing Anna Adams as a regular member on the Animal Control Board with a term that begins immediately and runs through December 31st, 2026. We have a motion reappointing Mary Sonsala to a regular member position of the Animal Control Board with a term beginning January 1st, 2025 and ending December 31st, 2026. And finally, we have a motion to authorize the mayor to sign a contract for 3 years of Barracuda email protection at a cost of $216,752.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Claire. Appreciate that. I'd like to invite members of the public to come on up for public comment on the consent agenda. Any members of the public here in the audience wish to make public comment? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody in the audience. Is there anyone online that would wish to speak to the consent agenda? All right, I'm not seeing any online either. Are there any requests for separated items? Okay, not hearing any. Then we can go ahead and do a voice vote, Ms. Trimble, on the consent agenda, please.
All right, voting on this evening's consent agenda, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Hearing none, that's unanimous.
Okay, thank you very much. We do not have any regular business this evening. You'll find on the agenda there that there are minutes included that from each of the committee meetings, that minutes that are available. And so next we'll move on to our next discussion item, which is the state legislature updates. So, Ms. Miller, you are the staff report of the evening.
Jessica Miller with Central Services. We have a fair number of pretty big bills coming up for hearing this week. I will just go through those fairly quickly. We have House Bill 154, which establishes a housing fairness tax credit, and House Bill 305, which establishes the mobile home park dispute resolution program. The first one has a hearing Thursday. The second one has a hearing on Wednesday. House Bill 305 is offers tenants a first right of refusal to purchase their mobile home park when it comes up for sale, and that one is sponsored by Representative Carlin from here in Missoula. So we're supporting both of those. Both of those really help us move in the direction of our housing goals for the city. Senate Bill 209 revises the length of conservation easements to be a maximum of 40 years. And that's something that we are working against, and our lobbyist folks are in touch with additional folks around the state to coordinate on some testimony on that. House Bill 20 would require voted levies to be in dollars rather than mills. We're opposing that one. It has a hearing on Thursday. And then we have Senate Bill 205, revising laws related to voter approval for property tax levies and bonds. That requires minimum turnouts for all elections for all our elections. So for example, the fire levy that we just had that was passed by 60-some% of our voters would not have had enough voters to meet that turnout requirement. So we're opposing that one on Wednesday. And also on Wednesday, we have Senate Bill 204, which is sunset or reapprove existing voter-approved property tax levies. And that's another thing where it will put an end date on property tax levies, including those retroactively that we've already voted on. And finally, SB 96 doesn't have any hearings on it this week. That is the Working Animal Protection Act that I've mentioned a couple other times, which would override our local ordinance banning circus animals in town. That bill has passed out of the Senate, and City Attorney Ryan Sudbury is going to be drafting some language for us, and we're going to try to get an amendment on that on the House side. And with that, that's my report. I'm available for questions.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Miller? Yes, Councilor Carlino, please.
Yeah, I did notice that some of the bills that we're opposing, some of them passed with no opponents, and I'm just wondering like what our expectation is of our lobbyists on things like that. Like if we have our city position as opposing, do we expect them to speak out at one of the hearings against it, or is it okay for them to just do work behind the scenes? But I just noticed that some of them passed with no opponents, but we're on our sheet of paper, we're supposed to be opposing them. And I'm just wondering what our expectations are with that.
So we actually have some things in a priority listing in the database that we use for them. And so some of them are things, we try to focus our lobbyist time on things that are directly related to our very highest priorities, property taxes and things like that. And then we also coordinate with them on whether or not it's useful for Missoula to be in the room on some of those topics. So that is a discussion that we have with them on a regular basis on who's supporting what and in what ways. And there are some bills where, we may oppose it or support it, but it's me sending a direct note to our delegation about those items. So it really kind of depends on the particular bill.
Another question? Go ahead.
Yeah, just had one other question. Sorry, that made sense. Yeah, I was just confused, like when some of them pass with no opponents when we're opposing. But also, I'm curious, I think our lobbyists are doing a great job, but I'm also wondering if we know how many different contracts they have, because it feels like there's some like major bills that, we have a position on, but they never actually get up and speak on behalf of the city of Missoula. And maybe that was in your last explanation, but I'm wondering if perhaps they have quite a few contracts to where it's just not even possible. Do we know how many contracts they have?
I don't know how many contracts they have. I do know they have, so the lobbyist firm that we contract with has, I believe, 3 primary and kind of 1 secondary sort of float person. So we do have one person who we meet with weekly, and we go over the hearings for that week and prioritize with her and discuss whether or not we should be in the room for those. And so anytime that they are not speaking on our behalf, it's either because, you know, we've got staff doing it or it's not to our advantage. It's it wouldn't be an issue of they don't have time to be there on a bill that's important to us.
Thank you for your questions, Councillor Carlino. Councillor Sherrill.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate these updates. On 209 with the conservation easement, that's not retroactive to anything currently under easement, is that correct? And I'm curious about what the tax ramifications in that bill would be for conservation easements, if you happen to know.
That is not retroactive. I don't recall seeing that in there, and I'm not sure how they would do that. And as far as the tax implications of that, I'm not sure that is within staff's capacity to determine that. I don't see any.
That's okay.
I don't see any notes on that. So yeah, I think that's a little bit beyond our scope. But right, there are certainly other organizations speaking up on that one as well.
Right. I figured that. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your question. Any others? Can I do one more? Please, absolutely, you bet.
I was also just wondering if you could, I know you mentioned that bill that you said that the fire levy wouldn't have passed if this bill was in place. Could you possibly go over that briefly for us, or what was the bill number on that?
Let's see, it was either SB 204 or 205. Let me double check. 205, okay. That one's SB 205. Mr. Bickle, would you like to speak to that one, or should I?
I don't want to do it off the top of my head because I will get it wrong. Let me see if I can call the bill language up quickly here. But what it does require for mill levy elections only requires a certain percentage of voter turnout. And essentially, let me get the actual language up here. And the challenge for municipalities in particular when when municipal elections are not during the general election, turnout regularly drags behind general elections. And so let me scroll down this bill. So if the turnout in this bill, under this bill, if the turnout is 50% or more, then it's a simple majority for something to pass. If it's more than 40% but less than 50%, then it's a 60% majority, supermajority to pass. And then if turnout is less than 40%, then the bond proposition is considered rejected.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. This is slightly big, so I'm happy to have it redirected or whatnot, but I am super curious about how the city's being affected by the federal grant freeze, and I'm wondering if there is a way to get some updates on that either in committee or another time. I just wanted to put it on the radar. This made me think about what's happening at the federal level.
Absolutely. I'm happy to speak to that, and then I'll hand it over to Dale Bickle. We are watching for agency updates. We have communicated across the city to basically be mindful of the revised memo that was submitted by the federal government in terms of specifics around the president's priorities. I'm sure you're familiar with that language, and it's not very specific. And so a number of local governments have been waiting for greater specificity from federal agencies. My understanding is that the president's order or the directive does not require agencies to submit information to the administration until the end of this week. So I believe it's February 7th. That does not give us any indication when we may actually get updates. So we're hopeful that it would be sooner rather than later. But that's so far what we're tracking. Mr. Bickle, would you like to add to my comments there?
The only thing I would add is we are asking our departments to review federal grant contracts, just understand the nature and what kind of liability we have. So there may be opportunities, or maybe not opportunity, but the necessity to ask in certain instances for a pause in work while things are waiting. But there are other contracts, such as a construction contract, for example, where we have, where we're committed. We have a and we have timelines that were agreed upon, and we need to move those forward. We're asking those, ask departments to work case by case with the mayor's office to understand our risk related to those type of things. We've any federally funded positions that we have currently, we've asked them to continue working as normal, but you know, if we're recruiting in any federally funded positions, we're trying to pause those.
Councilor Jordan, I'm curious, given your work with the state, if there's anything additional that you would have to share with how you're managing that.
Well, that was kind of what I was getting at, is the grant I'm working under actually is still currently frozen. We cannot access the funds at all. And so my job personally is on the line, but I was curious if there were any grant funding portals that we lost access to permanently, because I know that there was a general freeze and everybody lost access, but that was very short. The grant I'm working on, the portal is still frozen. We cannot get in and look at our account at all. And I'm wondering if there are any positions or programs in the city that are having the same experience. But otherwise, from the state, we've heard the same thing as what you've just mentioned overall.
Thank you for that update. And I'm sorry, that must be challenging in your work and your position. We have not, that we're aware of, had any particular accounts frozen like that. And like Mr. Bickle said, any positions that are not currently filled that would be federally funded, we have put a pause on that, no hiring on that. But in addition, but outside of that, we haven't had any jolts yet, I guess you could say. But we are watching on the daily and making sure that we're paying attention, and we'll look forward to staying in touch on how this might impact our ability to deliver services or to complete projects that we've committed to. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Miller, for doing all the work you're doing to track what's happening with the legislature. That does wrap up our item number 10, which is legislative updates. So we'll move on to public comment on items not on the agenda. I'll look to the folks in the room here and invite you on up. Come on up.
Dave Everingham. I live in the Upper Rattlesnake and Cornerstone development. We moved in 2006. At that time, we had no SIDs. Now we have 6, totaling $1,038 a year, with Parks and Rec and Roads District being $900. This has more than doubled in the last 4 years and has nothing to do with state, but it is a city-imposed tax. Now a lot of this money is being used for transient encampments and cleanup for drug addicts, alcoholics, and lazy, selfish people that don't care about anything but their own needs. This is obvious at the Poverello and Johnson Street shelters. The garbage there piles up around the areas, then city crews clean it up, and the transients and homeless sit there getting loaded, texting, and watch. We need work programs for these people. Change your present homeless practices. They don't work. Broadway corridor will never change as long as the Poverello Center and the city continues to pamper homeless people and derelicts that use the shelters. The Poverello needs to completely restructure their management and take responsibility for the people they cater to. The State Pre-Release Center near Broadway corridor between Orange and Russell Streets is full of ex-cons, sex offenders, and violent, unsavory people. Broadway Island and Silver Park area along the river are the bedroom for a lot of these people. I used to go there to watch eagles, great blue herons, beavers, ducks, and general beauty. It is closed now because the city and Parks and Rec can't even begin to manage it. I can't use it because the bums call it their home. You need to patrol it with 2 Parks and Rec people and police on a daily basis. California Street has had multiple murders in the past. Recently, a bum frequented Johnson Street shelter and possibly the Poverello Center, took a woman in Silver Park, threw her to the ground, and punched her in the face, cut both her breasts open and strangled her until she hallucinated and had sexual intercourse without consent with her. To allow transients or anyone to camp in my public parks is a bad idea. Your homeless policies are not working. Figure it out. The development of Broadway Island and improvements there have cost taxpayers millions of dollars. Some years ago, MRA Deputy Director Chris Behan was quoted about Broadway Island, quote, "Restoring the island to public use and opening up the vegetation is expected to resolve the homeless problem. It is one of those things that owners and nearby neighborhoods are beginning to not to use because it is a scary place." Behan sent an order for this to change back to more public use like it was in the past. You are going to have to change the culture of activity that goes on down there, unquote. Now the island is a toxic wasteland and closed to the public. Behan's theory does not work. Morgan Valiant of Parks and Rec plans to spend $2 to $10 million on the area. New improvements will not work. When will you people learn that the Poverello Center will always ruin the Broadway corridor? Before anything is done down there, the mess needs to be cleaned up, the island open again. The Poverello Center needs to act like they are part of the community, reorganize and screen their guests. Parks and Rec and the city need to honor the taxpayers and quit burning up money on projects that don't work. If we spend $5 million on Broadway Island and not deal with the problems first, it will be destroyed by the homeless and closed again. Wake up, city, look at the history there. Quit raising my SIDs.
Thank you for your comments, Mr.
Thanks.
Everingham.
Thanks for being on council, I appreciate it.
Appreciate that. Thank you, appreciate that. Any additional public comment this evening?
Robert Dunlop, 2316 West Kent. Last week you increased the budget for those community council meetings from 20,000 to 35,000, I think. That extra money, I hope it'll be used for something other than buying ice cream for people. People should buy their own ice cream. After you passed the resolution, somebody said the additional $15,000 was only a small part of the budget. I tell you, if you're going to control government spending, you've got to watch every tax dollar. $15,000 spread out may not sound like much, but it's akin to the person that's watching their weight. You get on the scale, you're a quarter pound over. You think, oh, that's not much. The next day you get on the scale, before you know it, you're over the belt. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. Any other members of the public wish to make comment this evening? Not seeing any additional. How about online? Any public comment online tonight? Okay. I'm not seeing any hands raised. I don't believe we have any. Thank you again for coming down tonight, braving the weather to make public comment. Appreciate that. All right, so we'll just move on to communications from the mayor. And I wanted to mention I'll be at your committee meeting on Wednesday. We'll be part of the committee of the whole. The city coordinated a national community survey using Polko. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because there'll be a relatively detailed committee meeting, committee presentation at the committee of the whole on Wednesday morning. But I did want to speak to the fact that this is taking the temperature of the perceptions of the community, some of which is directly related to the city, some of which are perceptions by our citizens on how they evaluate access to health and medical, for example. So obviously the city doesn't have control over some of those things, but in some we do, right? That perception might impact access to outdoor space, and trails might impact people's perceptions to a healthy environment. And the detail will be shared by our, not only by our staff, but also we will have Polco here, who is the organization that administered the survey. Polco is a national organization that does this work around the country. For us, that's pretty exciting because this does give us the opportunity to compare ourselves to other communities. This is the first time the city has embarked with Polco, so we don't have comparisons from previous surveys to be able to show if we have improved in certain areas, but this gives us the baseline to start doing that. So that, to me, is really exciting. And, you know, generally speaking, I would say that people are feeling, you'll see that there's a broad range of perception and both appreciation and concern for certain elements of our community. You know, generally speaking, people love to live here. No big secret. They've identified what elements, or some of the elements that they love about this place. In direct relation to that, it's what makes some of the economic elements challenging. You'll see that people have expressed that they think Missoula is a difficult place to retire, and it's a difficult place to afford a home. Those two things are naturally connected. Some of these things, you know, I think we all know this. It's exactly why we are leaning into things like the land use plan and the Unified Development Code, so we can do our part in making sure that more homes are built and preserved that are affordable to more people in our community. So those are the kinds of things that I think it's helpful to see that we're on the right track around some of the policies that we are undertaking. A lot of these things are not anything that we can just flip a switch, but it's definitely things that we can start to work on and make improvement. I do believe, and Eric Hallstrom, who's our Chief Operating Officer, will be here on Wednesday for this presentation, and he'll be able to describe the rate or the routine by which we'll get into assessing this survey. But Jessica was also very involved and engaged in this, and Jessica is every few years we will go back out to the community. What's the rate by which we'll go out and resurvey?
I believe that we determined every other year is the correct rate, and of course that depends on you know, each upcoming budget cycle. So.
Right, that's right. Is there anything that you'd like to add as part of what I just covered there? Is there anything that?
Not that I can think of at the moment. I'm just, as you said, there will be a representative from Polco taking us through the results and can answer all the scientific questions, and then there will be a lot of follow-up. Why do we think that this happened, and those sorts of things that we will have to, you know, try to come to those answers ourselves over the next couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other thing that I would say is that this is a survey. It is a randomized survey. So these were postcards that were sent around to the community, and this third party made sure that it was weighted appropriately. So it was representative of each ward, that it was weighted across demographics. So we had a good balance of representation. We also had a self-selected survey after the randomized survey was complete, and that was really encouraging. We did have it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is statistically accurate. The randomized surveys, it's something around 350 responses, which is statistically accurate for the size of city we are. 3,500 postcards were mailed out, 350 were returned. It's amazing to think that, like, that's statistically significant, but apparently it is. And then we did have we invited people in an open survey, and it was really great. We had 1,500 responses. So that was encouraging to see that a number of folks were wanting to engage and provide their feedback. The data that we'll report, the core data, however, is the randomized survey, just because that is most scientifically accurate. So, but we'll still have information to compare with the self-selected. For the most part, they seem to be pretty well in alignment. They weren't really in opposition to one another. And so really looking forward to have the chance to take a look at this with you. I think it gives us a great opportunity to, one, be transparent about how the people feel about how the city is doing, the direction of their community, and it gives us an opportunity to be accountable and to work towards some things. So I'm looking forward to the conversation on Wednesday, and just wanted to make sure that folks knew that was happening in the committee of the whole meeting at 9 a.m. on Wednesday. Let's see, what else? Boy, I'll just mention that I had an opportunity to take a tour with Parks and Rec on Thursday, and it is one of the things that carving out a good chunk of time to go see the different departments and the work they do it's really an awesome opportunity. So it's something I know that we still want to try to get done for council, and we can talk about that. So there's ways that you can see all the things that they're doing. We ended our day at the University Golf Course, which is a really interesting partnership between the university and Missoula Parks and Rec. We have this after-school program that we started in conjunction with Missoula County Public Schools. It started strictly on a grant basis, and now we have a sliding scale program where people self-report income, but it does give people the opportunity to afford after-school care. And I've been, told by so many of these families that they wouldn't. The second person would not, if there's a two-person household, they wouldn't be able to have, two people working because they would have to figure out childcare afterwards. And it was really cool to see our Meg Witcher, who runs this program for Parks and Rec, has these great little wall tents set up on the university campus right next to where the Nordic Club has done all of this grooming for the cross-country ski trails. And so, it really just speaks to the partnerships that we have around the community. So the University of Montana, Missoula County Public Schools, and then the Nordic Club, which is a volunteer group of people that contribute money to get all of our cross-country ski trails in our whole region here groomed for recreational purposes. And they do that at the university. And they purchased a bunch of cross-country ski equipment for kids to use, including 3 and 4-year-olds. So these things were like chopsticks. I'm not kidding, they are adorable. I have some photos to share. But it was really cool to see the kids come out after school and start to get out and use their bodies, have a light snack, be connected with folks. The other really neat thing that we're working on with Missoula County Public Schools is that as kids become teenagers, they don't really, they get too cool for camp, right? And they become mentors, and we have this mentoring program where it really works for their benefit in the sense that they're like, a lot of these folks are 13 years old, so they're too young to actually come to work legally, but it gives them an opportunity to volunteer, and then they're able to use that as a mentoring program and a skill building program for the eventuality when they want to go out and get a job. So it was just like one program of Parks and Rec in one part of the tour that I did, but I hope that folks have a chance to go see some of that. And it really made me just so proud of the work that we're doing here in Missoula and all of the partnerships that are happening to make this kind of thing work, especially for our kids and our families, for a good, healthy lifestyle and really helping out families after school. So it was a very cool thing. All right, with that, I'll turn it over to council comments, and I will look to Councilor Nugent to start.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. And thank you for telling us about that. I think that's a neat program and good example of some of the investment you're seeing from the Parks District on our tax bill. So I think that's good to hear. I would just say that given the weather that's, I think, happening right now, it's supposed to snow and get cold, to just remember to be good neighbors. There's lots of people that are going to need help with shoveling sidewalks and things like that. So let's just remember what it's like to be a good neighbor.
Oh, good call. Thank you.
I'll pass tonight, thanks.
All right, you bet. Councilor Becerra.
I'll pass too.
Okay, you bet. All righty, Councilor Carlino.
Pass.
Okay. All righty. All right, and how about you, Councilor Fasica? You will, all right, thank you. How about for council members online? Any comments this evening?
I have one.
Please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to the Missoula Police Department and the Missoula Public Library for working with me to get a decibel reader added to their library of things. So they have a library where you can check out non-book literary items like hotspots and camping equipment. We just added a decibel reader to their library of things. The reason why I was really interested in having this happen is that as we do infill in Ward 6, we have a lot of neighbors living close together, and especially the folks along the Reserve Street corridor who live a block back who are having some noise problems. And The police department have been really great at trying to come out and do a decibel reading, but they're often too busy to come and dealing with higher priority calls. So now folks can go and get a decibel reader, take the reading, provide an affidavit, and then potentially get some help with noise issues in their neighborhood. And so I just wanted to thank the library and the police department, and also let everybody know that this is something that's now available to them. So a good partnership, and I'm very grateful for their help. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. That's great. Councilor Anderson.
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor, and I really want to appreciate all the great work that you highlighted that Meg Witcher has done. She is a gem in our society and has just had such a positive effect on hundreds, if not thousands, of kids' lives in our community, and all for the positive. And I just, want to recognize her one more time, because she is truly a, wonderful ambassador to all the great things that Parks and Rec's done. And as someone who's learned to ski at a very young age, it has been a lifelong passion of mine. And I'm hoping that, the next generation of kiddos is going to share in that with, the work that are at the camp, and thank Missoula Nordic for partnering with that. My main comment I wanted to make tonight was to thank all of the community for coming out last Friday night. It was once again the Fire and Ice hockey game, which features the Missoula Fire Department playing against the Wildlanders, which are a makeup of all of our forest sport folks who do wildland firefighting. And it was a record turnout with over 1,400 people who came out to support the two games, and it raised over $19,000 for the charities that the fire department supports. And it was super fun, and it was great to see all the new rookies that we just hired thanks to the levy. We're all out there manning the selling the beer and 50-50 tickets and shirts and all of the great stuff. And it was just so much fun. And we just continue to have such great community support for our first responders. And I just want to take this moment to thank everybody who came out and all the work from behind the scenes. And, we won one game and lost one game. So the rivalry continues, and we'll look forward to it next year. Thanks so much, Madam Mayor.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for your comments. Glad you had fun. I'm glad to hear it was a success. That's great. Definitely, indeed, thank you for our law enforcement and first responders. And know on evenings like this, you're often called out on additional hours because things can kind of go sideways. Sometimes traffic lights end up not working, and hopefully that's the end of it. But please, folks, be safe these next few days. We're going to have some cold weather. We're going to have a lot of ice. And while our public works crew is hard at work out there, we can't just be careful enough individually. So be safe, keep yourself warm. And with that, I'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting at 6:45 p.m. Thank you.